Welcome to Crosslink Community Church Podcast, where we prize Jesus, make disciples, and love people well. We are so glad you're here, and wherever you're listening from, we believe you will be more acquainted with the heartbeat of God through today's message.
Good morning. It is good to see you here this morning. And you know I'm going to talk about the weather. It's already understood. It's been beautiful yesterday and today, and I don't know what's going on. I think God is letting us know, hey, there is warm weather, and then he's going to take it from us with no warning. It's just going to be taken. So anyways, I'm going to enjoy the warm weather as we have it. And so I hope that you have as well. I'm excited. We have 2 weeks left of the series that we have been in this week and next week. This series is, Does the Bible Say That? Context Matters. What we have been doing is not simply exposing the negligence when the Bible is used over and over again to prove certain topics and points, or that we tend to kind of shape the Bible to work in our ways or desires, but more or less to reveal that maybe the texts that we have seen and been heard and read and been preached about, maybe there's a deeper meaning that's going to provide maybe a little bit more stability or anchor for the soul. It's not just incantations that we throw around hoping they come true, but there's more involved there. And so we're going to be in one passage today. In fact, there's 13 verses. And that's it. That's it. We're not going anywhere else except for this one passage. So you can turn there if you'd like. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 8. We're going to walk through this here together and see where it leads us. I will give you a warning. As preparing for this message, it is incredibly convicting. So if you leave here thinking that I'm talking about you, it's probably true. Not because I was thinking about you but I tried to include everything in this passage that I think would kind of be sweeping through our congregation to hit each one of us. And so it is difficult. This text, I don't believe is necessarily taken out of context, but I think it's been mishandled or misused. And so I'm going to try to kind of shine some light on it this morning, and we'll see where that takes us. So in college, my freshman year, on my way to college, I had a 1993 white, beautiful Chevy Camaro. Some would say the reason why I have a Camaro now is because I had a midlife crisis. Either way, so I had this 1993 Camaro. It was my first car. I had to buy it. My parents, and until then, I drove my dad's van around. That was attractive, and so I couldn't wait. I got this car, and we drove it up to college. And I think the best way to describe it is I idolized this vehicle. Not only did I idolize it, but it made me feel good about me. During that stage of my life, I loved me so much, I didn't need anyone else to love me, all right? That's how I was wired. And so driving up to college with my collars popped and my Florida license plate on the back of a white Chevy Camaro, going to Indiana where they've never seen a beach, and they're like, look at this tan, beautiful man. So, I had, and it may not have looked that way, but either way, that's how I remember it. So I get to college, and I get there, and I have this car. I love it, drive around, make connections with a couple guys who have some nice cars, and we enjoy, have a good time. And then, so I get to college, so I go up there in June, start college in September. In October, late October, I'm going out of town, and I let someone drive my car. And so I let someone drive the car. I'm not going to say who it was. It wasn't Krista, so we'll just say that. But I did kind of put her in charge of getting the keys for me back from that person when they are done with the car. And so I tried to get a hold of this person while I was gone, and they were not answering their phone. And so I'm like, maybe they just got busy. And sure enough, after my 3-night weekend away for our tennis trip, I get back and come to find out the car was totaled. It was in that moment, just a month before that, I gave my life to Jesus, and that was probably a good thing, because I don't know how I would have handled it, pre that. And so, but I thought I handled it pretty well. So they gave me more money than I paid for the car, so I was excited. I was a college student, didn't know what to do with money, so I took it and bought even a better car. Well, not really better, but it was a nice car, and I had this car, and I had it for 30 days, and I wrecked it. So the moral of the story is I had 3 cars and 30 days in college. And so as soon as I wrecked that one, I went out and got another car. And I was identified. I was known by the guy who has had all these cars his freshman year of college. And so I don't know if that's what started my desire, longing to have vehicles, but I like new things. I'm one of those guys that I get tired of a vehicle quickly, and I'm like, I want something else. And so I'll negotiate and do whatever that is. I know that's in me because there's something about having a certain vehicle that makes me feel good about me. And I know I'm not alone. It may not be a vehicle for you, but there's something in our lives that when we have that thing, it makes me feel important. And if we are not careful, although it's morally neutral, meaning the Bible's not necessarily going to discuss it, don't do that, it's a bad thing. But if we're not careful, we'll take what is morally neutral, a naturally maybe good thing, and as Mark Driscoll would say it, we'll take a good thing, make it a God thing, and then it becomes a bad thing. That we start to idolize that more than anything else. It makes me feel good about me, and it's actually become the center of my attention and affections. And I think that's what was going on in the church of Corinth in many different ways. And we're going to address a passage here. We're going to read it and talk about it. But it's in 1 Corinthians chapter 8. So if you would, we'll start in verse 1. Now concerning food offered to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. This knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. If anyone imagines that he knows something, he does not yet know as he ought to know. Read that to any teenager you want. Go ahead. Verse 3, but if anyone loves God, he is known by God. Now, before we read to the maybe sections that are a little bit more difficult, let's address this, because I think he points something out here. As Paul's about to address a question that the Corinthians asked him, he starts out with, listen, we all have knowledge. You have knowledge, I have knowledge. The problem with knowledge is that we sometimes think it's all about our knowledge. I know I'm right, therefore I'm right. And he's saying, listen, there's a knowledge that you can have that actually isn't helpful. In fact, if your knowledge of a thing keeps you from loving people, there's something that's gone wrong. So you can be have all this kind of knowledge and know that you are right in a situation, or that you know that it should work out this way in this situation. But if that knowledge causes you to not engage and love people well around you, then that knowledge is getting in the way of what we are called to do. That there is something going on here. And let's be honest, as Americans, we like to be right in our rightness. That's what we want. I want to be vindicated and just. I want you to see I was right, that you can have the knowledge and do whatever it is you want because you know. And here's the idea that for some of us, even within the church, we can be so knowledgeable and be so right in our ways or the way we think things should be that it actually interrupts our ability to love those who God has placed in our path. And that's a problem. That's a problem. And so before we even unpack this, I think what you and I need to understand is that first and foremost, our love matters. In fact, it even says here in verse 3 that anyone who loves God is known by him. And the ever pervasive question, how does God know me? Through your love for Jesus Christ. You love him and he knows you, but that's not the point of this passage. It's setting us up. Verse 4, therefore, as to the eating of food offered to idols, we know that an idol has no real existence and that there is no God but one God. For although there are many so-called gods in heaven or on earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet for us, there is one God, the Father, from whom all things and for whom we exist, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom are all things and through whom we exist. This is what he is unpacking for us. Before we move on, it's important to know that as we address idols, and this is the thing that happens in the Old Testament, God just literally reams Israel through the prophets, says, listen, you're cutting down trees, whittling out those trees into idols, placing them on an altar, and worshiping the thing you created. That doesn't even make sense. Like, what, you made it, and then you're angry that it's not answering you. This is what's going on. It's like we understand, and Paul's letting the Corinthians know that we get it. We understand that idols do not exist. They are not out there. There is one God, one creator who created all things. And so he's addressing that for them, but there's still an issue. Let's get to it, verse 7. However, not all possess this knowledge, but some through former association with idols eat food as really offered to an idol, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. Food will not commend us to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat meat, or no better off if we do. But take care that this right of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. Now, has anyone ever heard, don't be a stumbling block? Raise your hand. Okay, good. I'm glad we have heard that before so we can redefine it. Verse 10. For if anyone sees you have knowledge eating in an idol's temple, will he not be encouraged if his conscience is weak? If his conscience is weak to eat food offered to idols. And so by your knowledge, if you underline, highlight, circle, do all of that to this phrase, your knowledge, this weak person is destroyed, the brother for whom Christ died, thus sinning against your brothers and wounding their conscience when it is weak, you sin against Christ. Therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, and this is a bold statement from Paul, if food makes my brother stumble, I will never eat meat, lest I make my brother stumble. Now, I'm going to let you know, I'm just not there. I want a good steak. So Paul's ahead of me in this game. I'm working on it, but yeah, he won't. Now, let's address this, because there's something interesting going on here. In fact, this particular passage is Paul addressing a question that the Corinthians already posed in a letter to him. He makes reference of that in chapter 7. They are having contention in how they walk out this newfound relationship with Jesus in a melting pot society of ideology, religions, gods, philosophy, and faiths that has proven difficult for living for Jesus. If not difficult, contentious, and if not contentious, if not appropriated, compromising. They're trying to figure out, okay, we believe in the one true God. We believe that Jesus is our Savior. We believe that these idols are useless, pointless, that they're non-existent. So we're okay with eating meat sacrificed to them because that sacrifice was in vain. They're okay with it. And then there's another group of people that are not. And so they're trying to figure out, how do we navigate this society? Because we know when church people get something in their minds that they think is right, and another person gets something in their mind they think is right, it's like World War III. It's like, you're wrong, I'm right. How do you know that? Well, I bent scripture to mean this for me. Well, I bent it this way. And so this is the debate of the ages. How do we know? And how did Paul answer this? Here's my thing. I think this passage has been used mostly to discuss what are our freedoms, because we don't have this issue, this meat thing. But we have many other things that we can talk about, that we kind of remove meat or food offered to idols, and we talk about other things. But I wonder if a better question to ask you and I is not what are we allowed to do or not allowed to do, but how do we today navigate a culture that is saturated by and inundated with idolatry? Because I think that was the question. I don't think it was really meat. I think that was the topic, that was the vehicle for the question. But I wonder if the question really is, we live in a society that is inundated with idolatry. And how do I participate in my freedoms but not allow those to become idolatrous to me? How do we do this? And all of the way, how do we do this without, with loving people around us? So we're going to answer two questions. That's all we're going to do this morning. Two questions with several points. Question number one is this: how do we navigate an idolatrous culture with a healthy understanding of our freedoms? Okay, that's one. Question number two is this: how do we navigate our freedoms and not cause our brother or sister to stumble and avoid legalism and anxiety? Okay? So those are our two questions. They won't take very long. Question number one: how do we navigate an idolatrous culture with a healthy understanding of freedoms? The Corinthians were struggling with eating meat. Some didn't see a problem with eating the meat. Some saw it as a problem. This was creating conflict. And we need to understand that meat sacrificed to idols was an incredibly common thing in their culture. This wasn't something that you had to go and seek out meat that has been sacrificed to idols, and you can go seek out meat that wasn't. Here's how this worked out. The supermarkets, the marketplaces, those who own them more than likely took all the meat prior to selling that meat and sacrificed it to the idol in back of their shop. And because the idol that is fake and non-existent did nothing with the meat, here you go, take it, it's yours. Devoting it to you. Come back, it's still there. Blessed it, I'll sell it. This is how this works. So they would sacrifice the meat to the idols, and then they would take the meat and they would put it on their shelves, and you would go to the supermarket and you would buy meat and you would take it home and eat it. This was everywhere. Not only in the marketplaces was there meat set out that has already been sacrificed to idols. You most likely went out to eat at a restaurant that was attached or next to a temple. That before they cooked the meat, it was probably sacrificed to an idol, then brought over to the restaurant. And so now we have a problem. You either have to be a vegetarian. Do you see the problem? Or you're going to eat meat that was potentially sacrificed to idols. Now, the issue at hand isn't that Paul's telling them, don't eat that meat. In fact, he says here that we've recognized that there's only one God. And that there are some of you who eat this meat knowing that there is only one God and that these sacrifices are in vain, and you feel comfortable eating the meat. And he says here in, I think it's verse 9, let me see, verse 8, food will not commend us to God. We are not worse off if we do not eat meat, and we're not better off if we do. And so he's letting them know that you can eat the meat. But now we have a problem, because there are some people who think that they shouldn't eat the meat. And here's why. Some of the people who in their conscience this bothered them were because they were believers who came out of a lifestyle that was inundated with sacrifice and idol worship. And it pained them to do anything that associated with that. And so they're now in love with Jesus, like, we shouldn't eat any meat. If we need to eat meat, let's drive somewhere, let's kill our own cow, let's go vegetarian. We shouldn't eat meat because they've been, I know, how do you know? Because I was a part of it, I was there, I was involved, and it pains me to watch those of you do this. And so that's a good answer. I don't want that person to be swayed against their convictions. And neither does Paul. And so what do you do with that? And not only do you have people who came out of that lifestyle and now believers, you also have people who are not believers, who are like, they must applaud or approve or accept idol worship because they eat our meat. And so now you can see this very charged atmosphere, culture going on. And they wanted to resolve the issue. And I think it would be easy if Paul just would have said, do this and don't do that. But unfortunately, that's not how this thing works out. And some said yes, some said no. Non-believers were confused. Paul already addressed in verse 8 that eating meat or not eating meat doesn't give us more or less favor with God. So the issue for you and I this morning, as I've rambled on that for 5 minutes, is that's really not an issue for us. I can go to Schumann's and buy meat because it probably wasn't sacrificed to an idol. Although I was having a conversation with a friend a couple days ago, and he said, there's this restaurant that I would frequent, and I'd go to this restaurant. I think it was a food truck, actually. I'm like, I love food trucks. They were given to us by God. Either way, they went to this food truck and noticed a sign at the corner that said that all the money that was used to purchase this food. So you go to the food truck, you buy it. There's a percentage of it tithed back to their God. And so this person who I was talking to was convicted by that. He's like, you know what? I know what's going on here. I have the knowledge now, and I see this, and I love this food, but I know that this money is a percentage given back to a certain idol, a certain God that I don't serve, I don't believe in. And so this person abstains from going to the truck. Because I'm just not going to go there anymore. I'm going to find other food. Like when you know it and you're aware of it, you can make that decision. Now here's where it goes awry and crazy, which we'll talk about later, is that if he then says, you shouldn't go there either. So we'll get to that. But right now, that's how that plays out. But we don't necessarily have that issue. But I listed, let me see how many, 12, because I wanted to include us all. I listed 12 things, struggles, that I think have become idolatrous in our culture that we have got to figure out how to navigate. You ready? Okay. The easy ones first. And I say easy because we've drawn a line in the sand. Like you've probably drawn a line in the sand on some of these. So the first few are taboo ones that we're like, okay, usually when this subject matter, this passage is preached, we talk about these freedoms. Here's number one, alcohol. In our culture, now, I'm going to say this first. Everything I'm going to list to you are freedoms. Freedoms as believers you can't partake in. But listen to me very carefully. How you deal with these things matter. Because before you know it, it can be like taming a lion that will devour you later. Okay? So be very careful with as we approach these on how you handle these things. Because we can take a good thing, make it a God thing, and it becomes a bad thing. Okay? So with that, alcohol. Some of you have drawn a line in the sand. Through your experiences, through your preferences. The Bible does not say you cannot drink. It does clearly say you cannot get drunk. We know that. We can study it, bring it up. You have different parties that fall in different places, but where we land is there. All right, and but because of family heritage, because of experiences, because of whatever, you may have a line drawn in the sand, okay? Number two, tobacco. Whatever tobacco. I'm going to list tobacco. Now, with these first few, we tend to debate them or counteract them with the passage later on in Corinthians that says your body is a temple of God. If we then use it for that, let me just let you know, there are a lot of things we need to stop doing, like McDonald's and coffee. Coffee. I don't know why I said it. Coffee. There's a lot of things. All right, so and in that context, if I would just let you know, in that context, when it says your body is the temple of God, it's talking about something that's incredibly fierce. It's talking about sexual immorality, which is a big deal. We want to avoid that one and attach that to other things. So, but we don't have time for that. That was not this one. So alcohol, tobacco, tattoos. That's changed over a decade, hasn't it? Like just within the past 15 years, tattoos have changed. It went from you rebel to that's good artwork. Sweet. But people draw a line in the sand when it comes to that, right? Movies I'm about to get to the difficult stuff. Movies you watch or music you listen to. Listen, yesterday got the Camaro out, got my daughter in the front seat and my son in the back seat. We're just driving down the road, taking them to a party. I'm like, what do you want to listen to? Country. Sweet. So we turn on country. I listen to country. I love it. It's great. There are some songs like, well, listen to that one with you in the car. That's what happens. But where you land on what kind of music you listen to or don't listen to is a line people draw in the sand. Movies you watch. Can you believe they came out of that rated R movie? Talk about them later. Number 5, dancing. When I went to college, there was literally in the handbook, no dancing. So I don't even dance, but I kind of wanted to in the moment. You know what I mean? I'm a rebel. So it's like, anyways, no dancing. That's changed. They can dance now. Like when I went to Grace, you couldn't, now you can. Oh well. Ready? It's going to get harder. Sports. Number 7, I'm just going to go on. Money, status, or material things. All these freedoms that we can enjoy in our culture, but if we're not careful, have been taken by the culture as idols. Your occupation, work, exercise, your desire to look a certain way or not look a certain way can be idolized. Politics. Number 11. Social media. And I debated on whether or not I was going to put this next one on. So I just want you to know, it was hard for me to write this one. Children. You need to understand that we quickly throw stones at how in the world in the Old Testament would any culture ever want to sacrifice their children to idols, to gods. Like to even think about that is heinous and gross and disgusting. But we tend to live our lives vicariously through our children and quickly sacrifice them to the gods of our culture. Or we make them the purpose of our living, which then makes them an idol. These things our culture idolizes, so how we navigate these things, or how are we as believers to be in the world and not of it, or how do we enjoy our freedoms yet keep Christ as the center of our worship and our affections? We all have different experiences and expectations with these things, so let's deal with this by asking some reflective questions. And if I would, I'm going to identify or redefine what idolatry is. It is worshiping anything outside of the one true God. The worship of anything outside of the one true God. And what does that look like? Well, here are some questions, because here's what we can't do. I can't tell you which ones to do and which ones not to do. I'm not going to do that. Paul didn't do that. However, these are questions that I have typically tried to ask myself that I'm going to give to you. Okay, ready? Number 1, as you navigate these things, does this consume me or my family? Is it consuming? Meaning, as a family, you don't have reprieve. You don't have time to sit and bask in the goodness of God, that it just keeps you going and going and going. Is it consuming to you or to your family? Do you consume alcohol or does it consume you? It's a good question to ask. Number 2, is my life empty without these things? Jimmy, you understand these things are in my life because it makes me feel, have vitality and purpose and direction. If I don't have them, then I'm empty. I think Christ is enough and is supposed to be enough. And sometimes the stripping away of those things needs to happen so Christ becomes enough. Is my life empty without these things? Third one, does this negatively impact my relationship with Jesus and his church? That's a tough question, because most of us are good at manipulating our own thoughts and feelings, right? No, this doesn't negatively impact me. Yeah, how long have you been in the Word this week? My first opening statement was going to be like, if we invest more time in these than in God's Word, then we've created them as idols. And the problem with that is it will indict us all, and you'll leave hating me like, he's too radical, I'm out. So, but I think it's worthy to ask, if it's pulling you away from learning, knowing, diving in the words that God gave us to understand his heartbeat and his Savior, then there's a chance that those things are consuming you more than you would like to confess, and then negatively impacting your relationship with Jesus and his people. Next one. Do I use this as an opportunity to spread the love of Christ and his gospel? Am I constantly aware of? Let's take an easy one to deal with. You're pulled away because of sports. You're on the road a lot. Am I aware of that God has me in this place at this moment, not for the sports, but so that I can love on, encourage those who are around me? Am I living missionally during this process? If God has us busy during this season, am I loving Christ and spreading his gospel? If I'm enjoying my occupation, I love my work, am I using that as a mission field to love Christ and spread his gospel? And I don't mean in that, you guys know that super spiritual, weird, don't ever talk to that person kind of way. You know who I mean? You have a name that popped in your head? Mine too. Like you're like, I don't want to be like that person. You don't have to be. Listen, here's what I've learned. If you're there and you're loving and you're engaging and they know where you stand and you continue to love and engage no matter if they don't stand where you stand, then when what they're standing on falls out and they're in the dark night of the soul, guess who they reach out to? The ones who are loving and standing on the grace of Jesus. All the time. It happens. I would get a phone call from someone that doesn't love Jesus at all, but because I've tried to invest and engage in their life, things get hard and they call me up and they, Jeremy, can we talk? This is what happens. You got to love and engage those around you. Next one. Does it empower me to have loving conversations with my brother or sister? Or because I partake in these things, I tried to hide and avoid? Let me explain. Brother and sister, meaning those of you who believe in Jesus. You're together. You go to the store and you go to the liquor place. You put liquor in your cart and you walk around. You see someone from the church and you're like, because you know people from the church they like to look in the cart. Oh, it's good to see you here. What's that? Right? Like you're just like, I'm just going to avoid that altogether. If your freedoms cause within you a hiding, flighting, or avoiding, then you need to put them in check that maybe they're more of an idol than they are a freedom. But if they allow you to have sensible conversations, then maybe they're a little bit more healthy. I don't know. That's a question for you. Do I consider how it impacts those who do not know Jesus? As I navigate these freedoms and I do this in a culture that's inundated with idolatry, am I aware of how this looks to those around me? Now, with that, how do we navigate our freedoms and not cause, question 2, not cause our brother and sister to stumble and avoid legalism? Let's go back to the text again, verse 9 through 11. But take care that this right of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. For if anyone sees you who have knowledge eating in an idol's temple, will he not be encouraged if his conscience is weak to eat food offered to idols? And so by your knowledge, this weak person is destroyed, the brother from whom Christ died, thus sinning against your brothers and wounding their conscience, then this, when it is weak, you sin against Christ. So okay, list of freedoms, and that list was not total, like there's more, it can be more, but the list of freedoms, navigating a culture that idolizes those freedoms. Now what do I do to make sure I don't offend or cause someone to stumble or cause someone to sin? How do I do this? But how do I also avoid legalism and anxiety, which we'll talk about? First, we must rightly define a stumbling block. Here's not what it is. That you are doing something I don't like. That's not what a stumbling block means. Like, you don't like it, you don't approve of it, therefore I caused you to stumble. That's not how this thing works out. In fact, it's not you or me getting angry with one another because we have different lines drawn in the sand. It's important. If you are a faithful believer in Jesus, ever growing in your love and adoration for him, then what's natural is that your love for one another ever increases. And so what should happen is not you get angry and bitter for those who have different lines in the sand than you, but you're willing to have conversations, loving conversations. Hey, explain to me where you're at in this. Let's encourage one another. Let's allow iron to sharpen iron. And this is what I believe doesn't always happen. In fact, the story I gave you, I was a part of a church that there was a guy who left the church, and he was one of the leaders, and they go to a store, and during this time, this is several years ago, you couldn't buy alcohol until after 1 o'clock on a Sunday. And so he went to the store, and they got their couple of 6-packs of beer, and they're waiting for it to be 1 o'clock. So they could purchase it because they were having a barbecue the whole afternoon. Now here's the issue. A person from the church came in, went up to him and talked to him. They noticed there was alcohol in the car. It's like, yeah, we're just waiting around until we can go through the line and buy this. That person didn't have a conversation here, left the store, and then started to say, how dare they? What kind of idol would it be that you are waiting to buy it? They actually never talked about it, but he came to the back doors and started to talk about it with other people. These are the kinds of things that happen. Here's the issue. That's not what this is supposed to be about. If you are here at Crosslink, you're my family. I want to love you, have conversations with you, know where you land so we can help navigate this culture together. Because 5 years from now, as right as I seem, I may not feel as right, and I'm going to need someone to say, not, I told you so, but hey, I'm here with you. Conversation. I lost track. When it talks about a stumbling block, it's not something that you don't like or I don't like. Here's what's actually going on here, is that the person with the knowledge is actually convincing the person who has a weaker conscience to partake in the thing that he's partaking in. I'll give you a great example that I heard. This was not me, I heard this. You go overseas. And I know I'm using alcohol a few times, but it's an easy one because people are like, it polarizes the room. You go overseas and you can start drinking at age 18, certain areas. And so let's say you go with a few buddies, you go overseas, and you're 19 years old, and you're like, I'm gonna drink some alcohol because you can't over here. But then your buddy who's with you is like, yeah, but it's 21 for us, and we're not really from here, we're just over here. So I just feel in my conscience that this is not, like, I'm convicted to do this, I'm gonna wait till I'm 21, and that you the entire time is like, nah, man, come on. You're 19, we're good, you're 19, it's 19 over here. And then that person's like, in my conscience, so I just don't feel it's right. And you, in some way, and somehow you convince that person to then take that. That's actually not only causing them to sin against their own conscience, but it actually says it's causing you to sin against Christ. Meaning that if you have a conscience that's weaker than mine, or you have convictions that I'm trying to convince you in the banner of freedoms to partake in, then I have totally missed out on what this is about. How dare I put a stumbling block in front of you to do something of that nature? This happens. You have it. You sit down and you talk with someone, convincing them to go against their conscience and go against their convictions for the sake of freedoms. I think that's exactly what Paul is going on here, because there is a qualifier here. Verse 11, did you see it? And also by your knowledge, meaning you know where that person stands, and you otherwise convince them not. That's causing someone to stumble. And the reason why I say navigating this, and Sierra can work her way forward, and navigating this with avoiding legalism and anxiety is this. Legalism, stop doing these things and doing these things. If you would be a cookie cutter Christian, life would be great. How many of us in this room know when we leave these doors, things don't always go to plan? And so for a church to say, this is what you should look like, to put you in a mold and send you out there, the world is going to blow up that mold. So we're going to give you all the wrong answers for the questions that are being asked out there. Instead of actually doing spiritual formation, trying to explain, how do you know the Holy Spirit's voice? How do you know how to navigate this thing? Not let me call my pastor and ask him. But to grow each other in such a place where we are truly a light out in the community, pointing back to Jesus, saying, this is where I stand. Most people's problems are the Christians who believe in Jesus can't actually have a sensible conversation. Because it will always end with, I don't know. Let me call Jeremy. And then you call me and I Google it and send it back to you. Legalism would be giving you the things to do and the things not to do, and just do that and you're good. But anxiety is walking around always thinking I'm offending somebody. To not enjoy or participate in freedoms that we have because you're anxious that you're going to offend somebody. That's not healthy either. It's not healthy. Like we gotta balance both. We gotta figure this thing out. And so I have three things, and I am done, I promise. Three things that I think will allow us to not focus on legalism and then also not walk in anxiety, that I think would be biblically saturated. And this is the first thing that we strive for, we long for, we build authentic community. Meaning that we are a church that hasn't figured it out, but trying to rely on Jesus as we continue to move forward and attack this culture with the gospel. That we do it together, authentically. When you walk through our linked up class that we have, one of the things that we say at the end is that one of our core values here is authentic community, meaning that we are all of one mind and one heart towards our mission. Prize Jesus, make disciples, and love well. And that authenticity means that I don't do as good a job as I want to do with that mission. We confess, you know what? This week, this freedom became an idol to me. I was stressed out, I was broken, I was depressed, and I ate a whole thing of Oreos. That's what happens to me. It's double stuffed Oreos. Number two, loving communication. Meaning our first reaction isn't to be critical and judgmental and say, how dare they, but to be, hey, let's talk, man. Let's enjoy. Let's have conversation about this, man. I love this. I love that your line's different than my line. Anyone ever say that? We're on different sides. No, that's not how this works out. But it should. Because you're going to grow me and I'm going to grow you. That's what this is about, loving communication. Then it will erase the anxiety. And the last one, which is what we're going to do at the end here, before I give it to you, because I think many of us in this room have these things as idols and we don't know it until we do know it. And so I do think that there needs to be a space where we can do number three, and that is constant self-reflection and examination. Where am I at with this? I believe as Paul wrote this letter back to 1 Corinthians, and this argument goes through 8, 9, and 10. As he wrote back to them, I think what he really wanted them to do, because he does say at the end of 2 Corinthians, is make sure at the end of it all, that you examine yourselves. So I wonder if that's what we should do, man. Just weigh out some of the freedoms that we participate in and weigh them out. Does this consume me? Is this an idol? Do I need people around me to make sure this stays in check? Or do I just want to do whatever it is I want to do? So if you close your eyes for a moment, Sierra's going to sing a song. During the song, I think it's a great time for us, you and I, to do this self-reflecting. I wish I had answers for you. Meaning I wish I could say, It'd be easy if we just do this. But that's not how this works. But how it does work is that I am faithful and I believe that our Father, Jesus himself, the Holy Spirit will speak to you in this moment. That if you're honest and you're open and you say, God, can you reveal in my heart some of these things that are idols or going to be idols? I believe he's faithful in doing that. So if you would, just take a moment to self-reflect. Father, we love you. We thank you. We thank you for scripture. We thank you that sometimes the text we have doesn't give us the clear-cut answers that we want. But since your love for us continues to invade our space, to remind us over and over again, whether it be the stripping away of things or the realigning of things, to remind us that your son Jesus is enough. And Father, if there's anything right now in this moment that is above him, can you help us tear it down? Can you help us deal with it? We can't deal with it alone. We need your help, and we need the help of those around us. And so, Father, this is a moment where we want you to speak into our hearts and our minds and our space.
Thank you for listening to Crosslink Community Church Podcast. If you would like more information about our church, please visit our website at www.crosslinkchurch.com or join us in person on Sunday mornings at 10:20 a.m. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss a single message, and share with a friend. Thank you again for listening.